We've been doing a study through the book of Psalms, and today I want to talk with you about Psalm 46. The message that was brought in our worship service this past Sunday brought this psalm to mind, and Brother John Hambright was speaking this past Sunday, and he shared with us from Daniel chapter 2. And in Daniel 2, we see this scenario where Nebuchadnezzar has this dream about a giant statue. And I'm not going to go into all the description of the statue, but the statue is huge. And each section of the statue ends up, Daniel interprets his dream and lets Nebuchadnezzar know that each section of this statue represents not only his kingdom, but the kingdoms that are to come. And it represents strength and power and all of the characteristics that you would normally relate to a monstrous, colossal statue. And yet, as Nebuchadnezzar is dreaming about this statue, he sees a stone fall from heaven. And this stone has been cut, but not by human hands. And this stone represents the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ, and the kingdom that he will establish. And as Nebuchadnezzar watches this stone fall from heaven, it smashes the statue to where there's almost nothing left. It turns into dust that then scatters all over the whole earth. Psalm 46 has a similar theme. It talks about nations raging against nations and all of these powers of the earth, and yet God is reminding them as well as us as God's people that He's in control. Let's read that chapter together. Psalm 46 says, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, and though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, and she shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes war cease to the ends of the earth, and he breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." And as I was reading that psalm, I was reminded of that passage out of Daniel chapter 2. He says in verse 9, "He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire." And I can just get a picture of that stone coming out of heaven and just smashing this giant colossal statue, representing that God will put an end to all of this earthly strife and war that man is constantly stirring up. And God says, I am in control. You know, sometimes when we read verse 10, which is probably the most well-known verse of this passage, "Be still and know that I am God," we kind of get this idea of this quiet, babbling brook next, in a field or a forest somewhere, and this idea of just, be still in God's presence. That's not really the context of this psalm. Basically, when God is speaking here back to the psalmist and he says, "Be still," you could even interpret this as God saying, stop it, stop all the fighting, stop all of this chaos. And he's telling the nations of the earth to stop fighting. He's in control, not them. He's reminding them that he is God and not them. But there is a command also. This command to be still is not just for the nations of the earth that are at war. It's also for God's people. He's saying to God's people, stop fretting. You know, sometimes I think the church is just a little bit like Chicken Little. And we're running around, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Or maybe that famous phrase that you've heard in so many movies, we're all gonna die. You know, I think if we're not careful, we can sometimes have a tendency to show that fear. And God says, stop. I'm in control. I am a fortress. If you come to me, you will find peace for your heart, rest for your soul. He says in verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Listen, no matter what's going on in your life, if it may just be a result of the chaos that is our world right now, but you could also be in some kind of spiritual unrest, or maybe there's some kind of specific trouble to your family or to your individual life. Just know that God is present and He is a refuge, and you can run to Him. And God says, stop worrying, stop being fearful, and know that I am God and I'm in control. I hope this word blesses you today. If it does, be sure and share it with others. God bless you.